last 30 years, the NBA has become one of the most recognized brands in the world. Names like Larry and Magic, Shaq and Kobe, MJ and LeBron, giving us some of the best moments in all of sports. There have been dark times too. But the worst scar inflicted on the game may not have come from a player or a coach, but from a referee.
Allegations against one basketball ref.
The NBA insists this appears to be an isolated case.
NBA official gambling on
Betting
games.
on and even tilting the outcome of games is rocking the NBA.
Tim Donaghy officiated NBA games from 1994 through 2007. 772 regular season and 20 playoff games before he was caught red-handed doing the most unacceptable thing in sports, betting on games.
Tim Donaghy, outside official, they don't know what he saw.
He began betting on the NBA in 2003. In 2006, he started sharing information with the mob. Big money was wagered, Vegas lines moved, people noticed. Donaghy was busted by the FBI in 2007 and pled guilty to conspiracy and transmitting wagering information.
This is the worst situation that I have ever experienced.
Tim Donaghy would never ref again. He was fined $500,000 and sentenced to 15 months in prison, where he wrote his memoir. Banned from the game he loves, Donaghy now owns and operates a sports handicapping website. Welcome back. I'm joined now by Tim Donaghy. Tim, it's nice to have you on the show. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good, Tim. Take me back to the very start. Tell me about the first time you bet on an NBA game. How did that start?
It started that I just had a friend at a country club where I used to play golf, and he had the Philadelphia Daily News and was looking to place some bets in the NBA that night. And I had just come from home, and I was looking at the master list of referees to see where my buddies were that night. So I knew who was refereeing the games and basically create a line based on relationships that existed, either positive or negative, between the referees and players, referees and coaches, and referees and owners. And once I created a line, I would look at the line that was in the newspaper, and if it was a 4 or 5 point difference, I would tell people to bet the games.
You didn't just share information and help your buddies. You actually started to bet on the games.
Correct.
How did that happen? How come?
Just sitting at lunch with other referees and getting information to where, we were going to stick it to somebody that night. An example of something like that would be Allen Iverson when he was playing for the Denver Nuggets. He had just had a serious problem with Steve Javie a couple games before, and we didn't like the way the NBA handed out the punishment to Iverson. We felt as a group that he should have been suspended and was only fined. So the 3 referees on that game tonight, and I was one of them, decided that we were going to call palming violations on him that night. And, in the first quarter, we all called one on him and definitely put him at a disadvantage because he couldn't pause that ball and get around that defender as easily as he was used to.
Did you bet that game?
Yes.
Tell me, the culture of the thing, would the referees sit around and decide collectively, we're going to get that guy tonight?
At certain times, if you had those group of guys together that would target a certain player, or Rasheed Wallace, if somebody had a problem with him in the past, it definitely was discussed.
Hey, help me understand this. There's a game 6 of the Western Conference Finals, 2002, Lakers and Sacramento Kings, a notorious game. Sacramento was up in that series 3-2. You could certainly argue that if the NBA Finals were New Jersey and Sacramento, that would not be a very sexy matchup. The Lakers come out and they win that game. They had 40 free throws. They had 27 free throws in the fourth quarter. I mean, these are really staggering numbers. Was the fix in that night?
I'm not going to say the fix was in, but I definitely think that Sacramento was put at a disadvantage with Dick Bavetta being put on that Game 6. He was notorious and openly discussed with other referees that he was the NBA's go-to guy, and that he was put on Game 6s to make sure they went to Game 7s because that was good for the league, higher ratings, more money. So he openly discussed that with other referees.
So Bavetta, he used to admit that? He was proud of that?
Absolutely. He was claimed to be the NBA's go-to guy.
So in that sense, is that game not fixed if this guy is a company man who's going to call that game a certain way?
I think everybody has an opinion on whether it's fixed, manipulated, whatever terms you want to use, but certainly Sacramento, in my mind, was put at a disadvantage, and the Lakers were put at an advantage.
You made about $250,000 a year as a referee. How much money were you betting on the side?
$1,000 to $2,000 a game. So it wasn't anything that it was a need that I needed money. It was just the rush and the addiction of gambling that really got me caught up in the whole thing.
And obviously you knew it was wrong. You knew you were really putting yourself at great risk. Why did you do it? Why did you keep doing it?
You know, I think if I had the answer to that question, you know, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today, and I'd be in a much better situation, still running up and down the floor in the NBA. But I just got caught up in it. It was, you know, something with the adrenaline flow of loving to gamble.
Were you the only one who did it? Because David Stern would say that you were a rogue individual, a rogue criminal. He made it sound as if you were the only one doing it. Were other referees doing it?
I mean, David Stern, you know, made a lot of comments. Really, he stuck his foot in his mouth. There was a lot of referees that were gambling. Can I sit here and tell you that other referees were gambling on NBA games? No, I can't. But, I mean, there was a culture where we all liked to gamble, whether it was at casinos or on football games or on the golf course. But to sit here and say that other referees were betting on NBA basketball games, I'm not going to sit here and say that.
So was Stern right then when he said that you were a rogue individual? Were you the only one?
I think I was probably the only one that placed bets on NBA games, especially games that they were involved in meetings and ended up officiating.
At a certain point, you were approached by James Baba Batista. Who was he and what was he looking to do?
He was an associate of the Gambino crime family in New York and Philadelphia, and he was basically a guy that was someone who placed large sums of money on professional sporting events. So he had known that I had been betting NBA games in the past and basically threatened me and my family that I needed to continue to you know, make winning picks for him because he had been getting those picks behind my back before, and when I decided to stop, he wanted to make sure that I didn't stop.
What did he say to you specifically?
He basically said that he was either going to expose me to the NBA or send somebody down to Florida to visit my wife and kids. You know, there was basically no way out at that time that hopefully I could give him a couple picks for a couple months, finish out that season, and just be done with it.
Is that what happened?
No, definitely not what happened. I mean, the whole thing was exposed and blown up. It was figured out over Gambino wiretap, and, you know, from there, you know, big investigation started, and I was thrown right in the middle of it.
And Tim, ultimately, you went to prison. You were sentenced to 15 months after conspiring with gamblers. And I would imagine that going to prison in and of itself would be the biggest nightmare ever. But when you go in, your fellow inmates know that you were a cooperating witness. What was that like when you were there?
You know, I can still remember this like it was yesterday, walking into the jail and TVs being everywhere and the case being broadcasted on every news station across the country that I was a cooperating witness. And when you talk about going to a federal prison, there's a lot of people that are doing 10 and 15 years because somebody cooperated against them. So it's a situation where real quickly you're labeled a rat. Nobody wants to eat with you. Nobody wants to basically talk to you because you know, everyone's labeling you as a rat. So it's definitely you know, a very lonely and scary situation.
Well, and extremely dangerous, I would imagine. Were you ever attacked because of it?
I was. There was one guy that claimed to be associated with organized crime, and from the very beginning, you know, he said that he was going to get me, and one day he attacked me with a pole and did damage to my knee that I've since had 2 operations on to, you know, alleviate the pain.
You know, when you finally get out, then you try to put your life back together. How do you go about doing that?
You know, you just kind of rely on your close friends and family and do what you can to try and start piecing your life back together. And when you talk about being a father of 4 daughters, you know, you want to right away jump back into doing something to be able to provide for them. And that's what I found to be very difficult.
How so? What happened?
You know, just sending out hundreds of resumes to try and find a job and not being successful at doing that. Basically, everybody would say, you know, you're too notorious at this point. Maybe down the years when this dies out, we can revisit this. But right now, you know, basically nobody wants to touch me.
So what do you do and how do you provide for your family now?
Fortunate, this wasn't the road that I wanted to go down in the beginning, but I created a website called refpicks.com, and gambling is $1 billion a year business, as we all know, so I have handicappers that work for me. I handle the NBA aspect of it, and we sell picks for $20, $25 and give advice on who we feel would win a sporting event.
You went through a very difficult time, and you made poor choices, and you put yourself there. But refpicks.com, it doesn't sound right. It doesn't sound like you're remorseful. It's not necessarily a great look. Is that where you want to be?
I mean, I would agree with you 100%. It wasn't my first choice. Probably wasn't in my top 10, but it was a situation where I knew it would work. And as I got into it and monitored the situation and became successful at it, it was what worked for me.
And let me ask you this before we go. You said that David Stern said a lot of things that were not necessarily true. Did you and David Stern ever have a sit-down, eye-to-eye?
Never had to sit down.
If he was in this chair right now, what would you say to him?
No, I would say that, this whole situation could have been definitely handled in a different way. And the road he chose to take, I think, definitely hurt the NBA.
Tim, thanks so much. I appreciate the conversation.
Thanks, Doc.